Ross Chastain used the wall all the way around this racetrack. Logano has been the class of the field.
Check out the big brain on Brad.
Yeah, I need to change my underwear.
With NASCAR heading to the Easter break, figured it was a good time to jump in, catch up on where the season is, and try and make some thoughts going forward so we can make some decisions on guys we want to trust week in and week out, ways we want to think about qualifying, race day, futures, all that stuff. And of course, we had to bring in the big dog. Got to bring in Chris Werme to give us some information, pick his brain about where he's at through this 8-race stretch, and kind of think about how we want to plan the rest of our betting schedule. Brian Twining, how the hell are you?
Oh, I'm doing good, man. It is kind of nice to have a week off. I felt kind of weird yesterday, not waiting at the computer for lines to start dropping everywhere. But yeah, it's good to kind of take a week and regroup and see where we're at, where we've been right, where we've been wrong. And as we come back out, we get another week off essentially with Talladega, the first race back.
Yeah. Worm, how's your is this a week off for you, or you
we got Rockingham?
Yeah,
I mean,
true.
You got Xfinity and trucks.
Yeah.
Anytime you go to a new place, I think that presents an opportunity. I'm not quite sure what that opportunity will be yet, but I would not consider this a full week off like I would Talladega. I would actually consider Talladega the full week off. Whereas, if you can make a little money on trucks and Xfinity and get your kind of racing fix on the weekend, I think Rockingham's a great place to do it. So although the Cup's off, I still look at this as a little bit of a work week versus a Talladega where I'm completely off.
For sure. Yeah. Brian and I have been talking about kind of even with last week. Last week was a little uncomfortable. There wasn't a lot that was like really calling to us. And Brian and I both ended up making a little bit, so that was not terrible. Is Rockingham nostalgic for you, Chris? Like Brian and I are both. No, not really.
No, I'm later than Rockingham was not around. I did. There was some. The trucks went to Rockingham. I think 2013. I think Larson won, and kind of a stacked field.
Yeah.
I went back and I was like, that race that Larson won, did he kind of dominate? And yes, the answer is yes. And Chase Elliott, Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, Crafton was a series champion that year. Ron Hornaday used to be just a beast in the truck series. So that's a pretty stacked field. And Larson kind of this, at the time I would consider, I don't want to say no name, but he was 15-1 for the race. I remember that. And for him to go out there and kind of dominate was impressive. So with that field, certainly not to be overlooked, but a lot's changed. I don't even know if they've repaved the track. I think that's like, have they done that?
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure they did a repave a little bit over a year ago.
Yeah.
I heard an interview with Raja Karuth earlier at the end of last week where he was talking about how they've been doing sim work, but on iRacing, it's the old Rockingham. So he says, I don't know how that's going to translate.
Yeah,
that's obviously not going to translate to this weekend.
You're talking about there was over 3 seconds of fall off in a run at the old Rockingham.
Yeah.
If you get a repave, I mean, it's who knows? I don't know. It could be one of those things where we just have no idea after practice and qualifying what's going to happen. Or it could look like it's just going to be a snoozer with Corey Haim and then have him lose in a weird way. I just don't know. So I try not to have too many expectations going into the weekend. I'm pretty sure Kenseth and Casey Kane are going to be out there, so that'll be fun. I'm pretty sure, isn't that right?
Yeah,
they're running.
I'm pretty sure it's Casey Kane. I don't know about Kenseth, but I know Casey Kane is running Xfinity.
Running. I don't think
Why did I think that Kenseth was coming back to race?
He's supposed to be running something. I'm trying to remember
wishful thinking.
Yeah. Casey Kane's in the 33 in the Xfinity series. So for RCR. And he used to be like, that's before your time. He's nostalgic for me. Like I was kind of into this sport, Pete Casey Kane, winning big races. So yeah, it's that'll be a little nostalgic to see.
Kane took over the Bill Elliott 9 car, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that was a little before my time when he was back in the Bud car. but I remember him, he was in the 5 for Hendrick Motorsports, but he was also in the Red Bull Racing car. So Casey Kane is kind of his peak was kind of my start into NASCAR.
Yeah, Brian and I are very much like we watched it very young with like Mark Martin, Jeff Gordon, Dale,
Yep.
and then basically missed all of the Jimmy Johnson experience and then dove back in at COVID. So it's like a big gap in our NASCAR history.
Yeah, I was just gonna say my like lone experience with Rockingham is on NASCAR Thunder 2004. So
yeah, it was good times. So I want to talk about kind of big picture stuff, things that we're thinking about. If you guys have stuff as we go through it, feel free to shout it out. But I want to talk about mostly like guys kind of elevating, and obviously we know Ryan Blaney and Tyler Reddick. Those are kind of two guys that came to mind when I was thinking about this. Is they're really good drivers, but there was always tracks, whether it was just weird results or poor performance or whatever the case may be, that seemed to be giving them fits. But this year, it seems like they're, at least especially from Blaney's perspective, where it seems like he just has a rocket wherever he unloads. Are we in a point where he's elevating to another level where he can be a guy that, even if the track history says, he hasn't been great here, he's been just fine, but knowing what he can do and how good he can be week in and week out, we need to really think about, okay, maybe his number isn't that short, and maybe he becomes somebody that we're more compelled to target in weeks where maybe the rest of the community is like, the track history doesn't line up, I'm not going to bet him this week.
You want me to go first on this?
yeah,
I think, but that's always been the case. It's always been someone's not good somewhere till they are. Martin Truex Jr. was like the king of 1.5 mile tracks, and all of a sudden he shows up and he starts dominating at Martinsville. He starts dominating at Loudon, and then he becomes, he can win anywhere. And I think we have to put Ryan Blaney in that bucket as well. I don't know that you can put Tyler Reddick in that bucket. What Ryan Blaney has shown us is it's really hard to win the race with a fast car, let alone an average car. So it's becoming so hard to win these races. The margins are so slim, whether it's pit road, any sort of strategy, whether you pit a lap too late or a lap too soon, you just have to be perfect. And I think, track history, I think I actually care about track history less and less until we see practice where times are tight. And then it's like, okay, who's good through lap traffic? Times were tight in practice at Bristol. Like I thought, of course, everyone's gingerly running around. Okay, who gets through lap traffic the best? It's Kyle Larson and Denny Hamlin, and they run 1-2, and with really no competition. So I think track history matters when you're I don't want to say trying to force a bet, when you're trying to just kind of navigate a tight practice is when I would say track history matters.
Yeah, Brian, I know you're a lot more like just kind of less track history, more just feels. I like to lean into the numbers and kind of have it really tell a story about guys, because I'm looking to eliminate options and find numbers that I like, and obviously cross a bunch of people out in the way. So I'm a little more into like, they consistent runs, knowing that they're going to be there, in theory towards the end. And then obviously, especially when I'm looking pre-practice, once they get cars on track, obviously things can change. But Brian, I guess, in terms of how you're thinking about certain drivers every week, is there someone, beyond Blaney? Like I know Reddick hasn't really elevated into that elite guy where he can show up every week, but didn't like him at Bristol, and he was pretty solid. He's more of a top 10 guy. Is he somebody that maybe is taking a tier up into kind of where Blaney used to be as Blaney goes up to the Larson Hamlin level?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just start by kind of piggybacking what Werme said on Ryan Blaney in particular. And I said this leading into Darlington after practice. At this point, I don't think I can look at any of Blaney's past runs at tracks where maybe he wasn't necessarily good and use those to kind of handicap what we've seen out of him so far in 2025 with the equipment that he's got underneath him this year. I mean, even at Darlington, a place where he had struggled mightily to find even top 10s, he went in there, he was probably the best car all day. And, once he found track position, that was the issue, is that team just has such a bad time of putting together a whole race, as you were kind of alluding to, with you need the pit crew to be on their game. You need cautions to fall your way. And it came to fruition at the end where he should have won. But, I think that just goes to like Blaney looking at his past history, even at Bristol. Like, I probably ill-advised. I bet him 8-1 to win the race just because of the speed that we had seen out of him prior to practice. Like, I expected him to be good again. And sure enough, he was. I mean, he wasn't a race-winning car, but he was definitely a lot better than I think what a lot of people would have anticipated. And on Tyler Reddick, he's not quite there at tracks like Martinsville.
He disappears in races. Like that's I guess my complaint with Blaney as well, is Blaney sometimes disappears in races. And I'm not talking about an issue or, something like we saw that happen in Las Vegas where he just kind of got collected. I mean, just an by the way comment by the broadcast, Tyler Reddick mired back in 23rd, just hasn't been able to get anything going today. And it's like, you don't see that out of the top guys. And if you're going to be competitive in this for this season long regular season championship, you can't have races where you disappear. Look at the top guys. They don't disappear. Chris Bell, if he disappears, he reappears. Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson, they're always hunting. They're always picking up spots. They're always moving forward. And if they're not, they're figuring something else out. And William Byron just does a good job of hanging around. And outside of that, you just see guys disappear. Joey Logano can disappear. Alex Bowman can disappear. Ross Chastain can disappear. Buescher, Briscoe, Kyle Busch. Like, you just go down the list. Guys just disappear. Like, they take a race off or something. The top tier guys just don't do that. And I would throw Reddick in that bucket of just a disappearing guy sometimes.
Even Byron, to a lesser extent, will there's races where he'll get stuck in top 10, 12 and just kind of be there all day.
Especially if he doesn't qualify well. Mm-hmm. Show me a race where William Byron is carved through the field.
Yeah.
I will say credit to the 24 team this last weekend in Bristol, because I did not expect them to slowly, methodically find their way inside the top 7 by the end of the race. I mean, I thought maybe a top 10 car at the end of the day, but I did not expect them to get there as quickly as they did, and then actually be competitive, passing cars with lap times that were actually, if not up to par with, maybe just off of what Larson was running in that last segment of the race.
Yeah, he was impressive. Him and Elliott, we were both like, practice showed some signs of life, but then qualifying got stuck back in the 20s, and were we going to see them move forward or not? And Byron was actually able to do that. And
I will say our moniker of AAs showed up Sunday in Bristol. He was definitely average ass Chase
baby. He's the third best Hendrick car, maybe the fourth. I'm gonna be a little aggressive, but no, it's just like, he's fine. Like, he's really good. He's gonna be a top 5 guy, but I don't know.
And he sits 5th in points right now too. I don't he's just being rewarded for being good.
He's a compiler. He's just rest.
He does nothing. Like, you talking about Mr. Personality Chase Elliott here? Is that what I've never been so unopinionated on a driver, especially the top driver in the sport, or the guy that's the face of the sport, which I guess I would argue would be Kyle Larson now. It's almost like he doesn't care. Like, show a little fight. Like, I don't know. Maybe it's just his personality. And I don't know. I just, every week I look at practice, I'm like, he'll probably be fine.
Yep. But you're never like, wow, rocket ship. Wow, he's gonna fight.
It used to be like that.
Was it the accident? Did it mess with his head? Is he like, I accomplished enough, I'm just gonna kind of cruise out the rest of my career?
I mean, where's the guy that was getting in Denny Hamlin's face and flipping off Kyle Busch? And I was like, all right, I can get behind this. Now it's like, I don't even know. I just
Pretty
Is it
much
a
since
secret thing?
no, pretty much since the unveiling of the Gen 7 car, he's started to slowly go downhill in terms of his competitiveness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird because, like I said, Brian and I entered in around COVID, and Chase Elliott was the guy. He was the one that everyone was fighting to beat, and we just really haven't seen that version of him. And maybe he's just, whatever the case may be, but it hasn't appeared. I want to talk about qualifying and the new setup and kind of figuring that out, because with the new structure and guys going out way earlier than we expected or way later than we expected, we always talk about, you want to have, good rubber on the track, and the faster times always come later. And it seems like for the most part that's true, but if some of the elite guys, especially the ones that are really good at whatever track we happen to be at, there's opportunity for them even early. I mean, we saw last week with Alex Bowman. He wasn't one of the last cars to go out, but he was able to set the pole. Is that something we should kind of tweak in our brain about? Like, well, he's starting the qualifying early, so the number's probably going to get longer. We should probably wait on grabbing a piece of it, or like, I'm trying to figure that out, Brian.
Yeah, I think initially that was kind of the way that I was leaning, but the last couple of weeks, just kind of looking at the way sports books are reposting numbers based on practice much heavier than qualifying, as we've seen in the past. Even they don't really take much into account when it comes to the single lap speed and stuff like that. So it's definitely weighing less on my mind.
Yeah, I would agree. It, it used to be like you could really pick off numbers early in the week and guys you thought would qualify well, that were just gonna qualify. They were just good qualifiers, and you thought that they would be in the mix. You maybe didn't think that they were necessarily going to win the race, but you thought that their price would adjust accordingly, and steal a little bit of value. It's just now I think just so much information out there, and I think people are, books are catching on that, practice is a little bit more important than qualifying. But on the flip side, I don't think qualifying's been more important, with as tight as things are on pit road. You get a bad stall, it's like, oh man, you're going to be fighting it all day long, or just putting it on the pole, and like what that does for you. It probably is the reason why Chris Bell won the Coke 600 last year, and that's why Brad Keselowski, Brad wasn't able to get past him. You look at that so many times, even last year with Brad at Darlington. There's so much you have to be. It's so hard to win with the fastest car. It's hard to win the fastest car, let alone an average car. So you have to unload. You can't be behind the 8 ball. So from a betting perspective, I don't. Let's look at the winners this year. Okay, if we just look at the Cup Series, at a time when anyone's supposed to be able to win, this is like the field is the closest it's ever been. William Byron, Chris Bell, Josh Berry, Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson. That seems like a pretty small group of guys outside of Josh Berry that, just top tier teams performing at the best. But you look at that, those guys, they just don't make mistakes. If you look at, they don't make mistakes in qualifying, they don't make mistakes in practice. At the same time, where I don't think it matters much from a betting perspective, I think from a race winning perspective, qualifying is more important than it's ever been in this sport. But I don't think that the numbers move as much based on qualifying. So I don't know. I think if you're Kyle Larson and you qualify 23rd, yep, you can go out there and win a race. If you're William Byron and you qualify 23rd, I don't think you can win a race. I just don't. There's just certain guys, if they qualify outside of 20th, they can't win.
Yeah.
Whereas Denny Hamlin, if he qualifies 20th, I still think he'll move through the field and he'll be there at the end. Doesn't matter the track.
And does that make you think about when you're thinking about betting every week, like there's not going to be like the elite guys are going to win, and maybe you don't even bet them pre-race. You just wait till live, see who's moving, see who's getting in good position, fire then. The way to get in good and get action on these races is to do matchups, to do top tens, to top manufacturer, whatever, and then leave the outrights for live? Or are you still thinking there's going to be value there, even with these elite guys, where you have to like basically hit a perfect parlay of good starting position, good day on the track, no major issues. Your pit crew has to show up every time, or at least the important times at the end, because you can make it up, if it's stage 1, stage 2. But like it seems like there's so much that has to go perfect to hit the outright, especially when you're getting 3-1, 4-1 on Kyle Larson. That it's just like, why is the risk almost outweighing the reward?
I mean, I think it's always been about market entry, but now it's even more so. When are you going to get the best price on Kyle Larson? Is it going to be the opener? We've seen now kind of a new standard in the market where up until this past week at Bristol, Larson pretty much stayed 4 to 5 to 1, no matter how he looked in practice, how he looked in qualifying. He was kind of staying 4 or 5 to 1. You can say the same thing about Ryan Blaney at a few tracks. You say the same thing about Denny Hamlin, where there's not a whole lot of like the price variance doesn't change very much on Larson. But then this week we saw something where he reopened plus 250. And that's incredibly short. And we thought that the tires were going to be an issue, and he was still opening that short. So when I saw that tires weren't going to be an issue, it's like, okay, maybe it's time to watch the Masters, because because Larson's going to go out there and just thump the field. And if Larson doesn't do it, it's going to be Hamlin, and you're not going to get paid out there either. No. So I think it's important when you're betting these heavy favorites, or you think that, like you do want to get in on Larson, there's no reason to not wait until live, because what's your downside risk that he looks good and he goes from 4.5 to 1 to 4 to 1 when you bet him, and he's good and he's picked up 7 spots, that's why I've been so light on this year, just because it's been favorite heavy, and it looks like the favorites are going to win after practice and qualifying. It doesn't look like a long shot's going to win. And so you might as well just wait and see which favorite's going to be the best, and play a little bit heavier live.
Yeah. And Brian, like, I feel like even like we get on here, like last year, we get on here and there'd be a couple guys inside 10 to 1, but there'd be a big chunk of drivers from like 9 to like 14, 15 that we could make really strong cases for. And maybe there was a guy in the 20s that, we could say, okay, qualifies well, he's going to move up, it's going to be a better number. But this week, it's the 7 or 8 elite guys mixed in with a couple randos, depending on what track, and they're all inside 10 to 1, and then we're really just nitpicking at numbers, and then we're like, well, I mean, I don't really feel good about any of them. And like Chris points out, they look awesome on Sunday, they're moving forward. Even if that number goes from 450 to 325, they're awesome. They're going to be right there, and you're not losing a ton of value. It's getting really hard to get access to the outright odds at numbers that are worth taking a shot on.
Yeah, to that point, and what Chris was saying, like on Larson, the fact that he opened up so short this week at Bristol made it like an absolute no bet for me post qualifying. Now, I did text Chris during the race, like, I don't know if it was like 30 laps in, and I said, hey, Larson plus 125, huh?
Yeah.
Like whatever it was, just because you could tell when the tires were not dying, at any plus money on Larson, it felt like that was going to be a good play, which at such a short number, I didn't bet it because I'm a wuss I can't take a race winner in the Cup Series at anything less than like 3 to 1.
Yeah.
Especially when we had over 75% of the race still to go. But to your
Bristol
point,
of all places, right? You're not at Michigan where
exactly
it gets pretty strung out. It stays green. I mean, this is a short track where any incident and you're out of the race, right? It's not like Martinsville where you can still work you can work on your car. It's not, you're not going to have a terminal issue. Like you wreck at Bristol and Dover, your days are pretty much done. So,
and Larson almost did that in the final run with like 30 to go. He hit the wall. Like,
and that's my other thing is like, even like just like the past month with Ryan Blaney, like he's been the car. He should have won at least 2, maybe 3 races, and engine blows up, issue, gets stuck behind the restart behind Denny Hamlin. Like there's just so much weird stuff that happens at the end that even if you think he's an absolute rocket, it's still terrifying to get in at anything less than like 350, unless it's like last week at Larson and he's just clearly dump trucking the field. But even with him, like he's the bed shitter for a reason.
Yeah.
He could do something stupid. He could end up in, the wall, end up in another car, end up behind Ricky Stenhouse, and something dumb happens. Like there's just so much
And the
nonsense.
sand barrels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. But I also think too that the live markets are really starting to float during the race because books aren't necessarily privy to maybe a lap time that a guy is running later in a run as quick as we are as bettors. Like, especially if we're monitoring the lap times. For instance, at Darlington, Blaney was available upwards of 12, 14 to 1 in the third stage after the pit cycle had run through, and he was running 2 to 3 tenths faster than everybody else, making up time to get to the front and potentially win the race by passing Tyler Reddick. So, you look at that type of stuff and the fact that pre-race he was like 8 or maybe 7 or something. It, to Chris's point that he was talking about, there's far less value now almost in pre-race outrights than what you can find during the race on the best car in the final stage.
I will say to any caution, and Blaney doesn't win, right? He doesn't win the.
Yes,
it was almost a tease because he got to the lead, right? If you stay out, and you choose not to short pit and you decide to run long, you need that to stay green. And you also, and I think what books were looking at was, Byron had 4 or 5 lap fresher tires than Reddick, and Reddick was able to run away because he was in clean air, and that was more of a product of the 24 car, just maybe anticipating being out front, making adjustments. It's like the curse of the fast car is the minute you adjust on your car to make it a little bit better and you're in clean air and boop, you go back to like 8th or 9th. You're like, whoa, this car is way worse. We've been adjusting. Yeah. So that's to me like the curse of the fast car and leading laps. So I still thought it was a long shot, but man, his lap times and his ability to pass were second to none. But it still needed to play out, and it didn't, right? Everybody that bet Blaney at 14 to 1, 13 to 1, 12, 10, they all lost money. So,
thanks.
Yeah, I know. I did.
Same with all of us that bet Tyler Reddick at 14 and 12 and 10. Yeah,
I had some Reddick as well. But that's when short pitting actually worked. It worked for someone like Tyler Reddick. But I think that was more a product of Byron's car just not being that good versus Reddick being good on the long run and being able to risk staying out, protect his stuff in the short run, go up to the high line and save and make time. So I don't know if that answers your qualifying question, but yeah.
I'm just letting this conversation go where it was and where it's going because I think it is interesting.
But I want to talk about this. Like, it's more competitive than it's ever been. Times are tighter. It's anybody can win. It looks to me like 2 teams can really win.
Yep.
Like JGR and Hendrick Motorsports.
Yeah.
How do you? So my new theory is, and I'm going to work through this right now, that as it gets harder and harder to win, you're still going to see there's going to still be that margin where the best are just a little better. And when they don't, it's one of them's going to have a day where they don't make a mistake. Right. And it looks like if it's Kyle Larson without a mistake, he can win. If it's Denny Hamlin without a mistake, he can win. We've seen speed out of Ryan Blaney, but we've also seen mistakes. And then Chris Bell's going to be fast on these short tracks. What do you guys think? Like, in a time when anybody can win, outside of Josh Berry, it's been heavy chalk, and it hasn't even really been close. Like, who else has had a chance? Like, I guess Kyle Busch at Coda, but I don't know. SVG might have been the best car. Heavy chalk day.
The only reason why Kyle Busch was any good at Coda was the fact that he was out in clean air. I'm still convinced that clean air in this car has too much of a positive effect on the leader, even if that car is not necessarily the best. I mean, anybody who's running out front seems to be a tenth faster than what their car would be if they were running with everybody else in the pack. So like when I look at Coda, it was SVG, maybe Christopher Bell after him, but
Yeah.
Busch was maybe a third through fifth place vehicle there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think the farther we get away from the reset, the harder and harder it's getting for other teams to compete. It's really just Hendrick, JGR, and then lesser degree Penske. They have more options on qualifying and practice to try different setups to figure out what's going to work the best. They have more money, more resources, better engineers, and when you're talking about fractions of a second on a pit stop, fractions of a second on a restart, fractions of a second in qualifying, they're going to be able to find those very slight edges. And even when things are squeezing the field together, there's still going to be that
Yeah, that's
slight
what I
gap
mean. That
everyone
there's
else.
only a few teams that are marginally better,
Mhm.
and that's working out for them. You
Yeah.
know, and that's why I had such an issue, not an issue, but just Denny saying, "Oh, Daytona's become so lucky," and he just talks about how all the cars are the same, and it's hard. I don't know, are they? It looks to me like the same guys are winning every week, and not barely. You know, I mean, I guess you could say Darlington, but that was the fastest pit crew, and the guy that wanted it the most won. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. When that caution came out, even Ryan Blaney didn't think he was going to win the race. Like, there wasn't one person. It's like, oh, Blaney's got this. Not one person, including anyone on that 12 team. Jonathan Hassler, his crew chief, probably is like, we're in big trouble now. Like, and you know who thought that they were going to win was Denny Hamlin. There's one guy that when that caution came out said, yep, I'm going to go get this. Maybe you could say William Byron, but I felt like his hopes were dashed once he realized his car wasn't that good in traffic. He'd have to win the race off pit road, but I think he was running too far behind in order to actually for that to work. And dude, it was Denny Hamlin. Denny's like, oh, great, let's go win. And then he did. Everyone else was just like, oh, who's going to take this from us?
Yeah.
So,
and maybe that's why they're working in more super speedways into the playoffs. Maybe that's why they have those wrinkles to try and get the variance, because I think at 75-80% of tracks.
At what cost though? Like, don't you want Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson?
That's true.
Just competing, you know, don't you want that Chris Bell, Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, like the three of them kind of separate themselves? Who's going to win it? I guess that's from a fan perspective. You do want your big names to win.
Sure.
Look at Rory at the Masters. Like, everyone wanted Rory to win. So I don't know. Is it good that if AJ Allmendinger goes out and wins Talladega? Is it good if, you know?
To be fair, AJ is currently in the playoffs. If the regular season ended right now,
he's in 16th. I agree. Okay, so
but he's been running really well at the intermediate.
Zane Smith, Justin.
But I think they want randomness in terms of like 2311 or RFK or maybe an RCR car winning, not like Zane Smith, John Hunter, Riley Herbst, somebody like that winning. Obviously Josh Berry got his win at Vegas, and he definitely, like, it was weird when he got there, and it was good at the end. But like, if NASCAR could work their magic, they would definitely have somebody else winning that race.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's kind of an interesting thing that we're talking about how the cards are tighter than ever, but the odds are shorter than ever, and favorites are rolling.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know. Is this the tightest field ever, or is this just smoke and mirrors? And it's because it's so hard to get an edge that you have to be one of the top tier teams to have one. Because, you know, if you were to ask me without looking, like, who's running the best in the sport outside of, you know, those two teams, like if you were to say Bubba Wallace or Tyler Reddick, I'd say, I don't know. Like, they're just, whoever has kind of track position towards the end will probably finish better. With Chase Briscoe and Alex Bowman, I don't know. They seem like they're both kind of around, but no one's like race winning. Yeah. The only, I guess, outliers would be someone like Ty Gibbs, where they're clearly struggling, or like a Daniel Suarez, where they're clearly struggling. So I don't know. Joey Logano, how's he having? I don't know. He's having kind of a good year. I don't know. Is he having a good year or not? I don't even know how to quantify
Yeah.
everyone that's not Denny Hamlin,
Yeah.
Chris Bell, William Byron, and Kyle Larson. It's just those four and everyone else.
Yeah. It's kind of feeling a lot like F1, like where there's just the elite tier, and then and I think because RCR, RFK, 2311, a lot of those, I think that tier is getting pushed together and being more competitive. So it seems like more guys are evolving, but it's clearly like JGR, Hendrick, then Penske, then everyone else.
But it's even more than that. It's Chris Bell and Denny Hamlin at Joe Gibbs, and it's Kyle Larson and William Byron at Hendrick. And then everyone else is just, I don't know. I have no idea how other people's seasons are going. Normally, you can look at the field and say, hey, this team's struggling or this team isn't struggling. I don't know. I feel like Ross Chastain in 11th in points. That kind of shocked me. I feel like he hasn't really been around. Bubba's had a few good runs. I don't know. It just seems really weird. It's evenly matched as 5th through let's just say 14th. We'll say Chase Elliott through Ryan Preece. Everyone seems to kind of be just, if they have a good weekend and qualify well, they could run 5th or 6th. I mean, they can't win, but I don't know. But I think that about everyone, like Chase through Ryan Preece,
It's almost as if the leveling out of the playing field has actually been the leveling out of the mid pack, not the top tier guys. Because like you were saying, I think part of it is also driver talent. Because when you look at the top tier guys, I mean, Larson, Bell, Hamlin, and Byron, to a lesser extent of that group, like I think you would say all 4 of those guys are easily within the top 8 drivers in the sport.
Yeah.
And on top of them being in elite equipment too. So,
well, and like you can literally throw those guys in almost anything and they're going to be competitive. Like they'll race whatever, whenever, and they're going to be interesting, whether it's dirt, whether it's,
I mean, unless they're in the 44 or the 66.
Right. I think that would be funny is maybe for the All-Star race, they just like randomly assign cars to people and give Kyle Larson like the JJ Yaley ride. And
oh my God.
Because then we'll like, all right, here's a cement truck. Get this thing around faster than your 5, and then you can win. And then I think that would be hilarious. But obviously, that'll never happen.
Yeah, I don't know. It just seems. I just want to bring it up because just looking at the results and listening to how even these cars are and how hard it is to pass and all of these things, it's like.
Well, it
doesn't seem to be a problem for the top guys.
No.
Yeah, it's funny too, though, because even since they said that in 2022, when we saw like the most ever winners in the regular season, blah, 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 outside of the super speedways and maybe Josh Berry this year, you're not really seeing the mid-tier guys win at the regular ovals or road courses where Dinger or SVG can grab a win. I mean,
well, you did see like Chris Buescher won back-to-back, Richmond and then Michigan a couple years ago. You did see Austin Cindric win. Now that was one of the luckier wins you're going to see.
Yeah.
Like, but that was more of a product of, hey, he qualified 3rd and just ran 3rd all day because no one passed a soul that day.
But I also don't think Chris Buescher falls into the category of like, oh my God, I can't believe he was running.
Yeah, I agree.
I
agree. I would think that now, like if all of a sudden Chris Buescher went out and dominated at Texas, I'd be like, who's going to dominate at Texas? Like Kyle Larson, was he going to be 2-1? What do you make Larson to win at Texas?
175.
I'm definitely betting Blaney.
And then, but how do you bet him? It's
somehow.
Texas. If you don't bet him, he goes out there and leads all the lap. He could lead, every lap, in maybe not every lap, but he could lead 90% of the laps and then just get loose and hit the wall. You go to Kansas, like I can tell you who's going to run in the top 5. You just got to pick the right guy. That's why every week on the pre-race poll, I say, are we betting the fastest car, the second fastest car, the third fastest car, the fourth fastest car, the fifth fastest car? I don't know. You tell me who's going to win. I'll tell you who the fastest cars are going to be in a certain order. But getting them to win is And then you're not even getting paid.
No.
Like, oh, you hit Larson. Congratulations. You turned your $10 to $25. You just won 2 beers. And the guy ran a flawless race.
Yeah, I think that we got Hamlin, I think at 8. That was like, it feels like a gift. Like I can't.
Yeah, that was that Martinsville? Where was that?
Yes.
In Martinsville, up until we saw Larson this last week, was one of the biggest ass kickings from all phases of that 11 team. They unloaded fast. They qualified well. They made no mistakes on pit road. They made no mistakes. And then they put the best car. They gave Denny Hamlin the best car. They got him out front and was like, hey, you're going to have an 80-lap run to the finish. And after 50 laps, he was putting a 10th on second place in Chase Elliott and just slaughtered the field. And I was like, you know what? Good on Denny Hamlin. You did a great job to win that race. You can't take anything away from them. They did everything perfectly. And then you have the Darlington whatever. And then Kyle Larson then does the same thing that Denny did at Martinsville.
Mm-hmm.
So weird season. It's really as wide open as people say it is.
It's not.
I would disagree.
Yeah. Let me throw up I'll share my screen here. The odds currently for the championship as we look to close up shop here. And I think based on these numbers, it gives us a good insight into what we've been talking about for the last little bit. It's Kyle Larson. It's Christopher Bell. It's Denny Hamlin. It's Ryan Blaney. It's William Byron. And then it's everyone else. I feel like we have this conversation most years. Denny Hamlin at Phoenix. Is he going to Rory McIlroy his way into a championship and win somewhere where it sure feels like he can't or he won't?
Good this year. I don't know that Phoenix is going to be his issue.
Yeah, I think it's going to be getting there.
Yeah. Vegas, he was not strong in Vegas. Then Talladega, Martinsville. Obviously, he's going to be good at Martinsville. Might be a must-win scenario. I think getting there is way harder than the execution at Phoenix. When was the last time we saw him in the Final Four there at Phoenix? I don't think.
Yeah.
I think just the way that I think he can win at Phoenix just out of sheer the 11 team just operating at a high level, running top 5 all day. And then it's pit crew getting him off pit road. He can hold off anyone, I feel like. And a late race restart, who else would you rather have? I don't know. You can point stats in my face on who's a great restarter and who's not, but I feel like that's you have to look at that so contextually. Is Chris Bell restarting 35th on a restart? He's going to pick up 11 spots in 2 laps, right? Yeah. So that's why I think some of the stats are skewed. It's the guys that go to the rear usually have the most to gain. Yeah. Whereas if you're Kyle Larson and Denny Hamlin, you're restarting on the front row. A lot of the times you're not going to have the same passing stats, but you might have the same, like, holding your ground or whatever. Who are you taking over Denny Hamlin on a late race restart?
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely up there. I think Bell's interesting, but yeah, it's probably like the whole.
Okay, there's a caution. There's a caution, and you need a driver to go down pit road,
right,
and get a restart.
Yeah,
I guess that's a better point. Is there's a caution late in the race. You have an arbitrary 1 through 4 guy starting the first 2 rows, and you just have to pick a guy that's going to go out there, execute on pit road, get off pit road, and go get the restart you need and win a race.
It's Denny Hamlin.
This sounds disgusting, but I think the only guy in that scenario for a championship that I think could compete with what Denny is doing this year would be Joey Logano. We've seen him do it numerous times in the past where they get the job done when it matters most. And it's the reason why he's won 2 championships with cars that weren't necessarily considered, amongst the best during that year.
Yeah. I think if you look at Logano, though, a lot of the wins that he's had has not been aggressive on, like, being the guy with the fresher tires. It's been the guy that's like, all right, hang on for dear life. Both hands on the wheel. Make this tank big. Make yourself wide and elbows up.
Don't run out of
But I do
gas.
think that grit of it's Joey Logano as well. Like, when it comes down to it, he's not afraid to piss people off. He's not afraid to do whatever he has to do to get the checkered.
Yeah. And I think that's like guys like Byron, guys like Blaney. That's something they clearly don't have, at least at this point. That willingness to move somebody, to throw a block.
I think we saw Blaney last year at Martinsville.
Yeah, but then he got to the championship, and maybe if it wasn't his teammate, he would have been different. But
he couldn't get there at the end. I think the gap was a little bit.
Couldn't get there because of Larson and the way that he raced Larson the week before. And the thing is Blaney actually didn't even have to move those guys like that. His car was so much faster. But when it comes to the championship, I don't know how you bet any of this stuff.
Oh, you can't.
Because we're coming off of, in my opinion, kind of a stretch of races that are so predictable, right? You have outside of like Daytona and Atlanta, you had Coda, you had Phoenix, Las Vegas, Homestead, Martinsville, Darlington, Bristol, and big names have won that. When you get into the playoffs, you're talking about Darlington, Gateway, Bristol. Okay, sure, we can go ahead and slide a favorite through. The favorites can slide through as long as they don't have an issue. Then you go to Bristol, Loudon, Kansas. Okay, yeah, I think you could slide someone through there. Or excuse me,
round
Loudon,
of 8,
Kansas, Charlotte, Loudon, Kansas, Charlotte,
terrifying.
Road. Okay, you could probably slide someone guys through there, but then you get to Las Vegas, Talladega, and Martinsville.
Yeah,
man, that is going to be the hard one. I think Talladega and especially if you get someone like, I don't know. At this point, let's just say Ryan Preece. He gets to the round of 8. I don't know. Gets to the round of 8 somehow, and he wins Talladega. You're like, oh gosh, now we got to punch that guy's ticket to Phoenix. I hate that question mark, because at least in the years past, you've gone Vegas, Homestead, Martinsville. Okay, let's just take you win. You go out there and you earn a spot in Phoenix after those. Maybe you did it because someone else screwed up. Great, that's on them. You did your job. Maybe you did it because you won at one of those 3 tracks. Great, I'm okay with it. I was okay with Joey Logano winning the way he did. You don't like the fact that there was don't pit. You could have stayed out. Sounds like I just think it's impossible to bet at this point.
Well, I was just going to say too, I think there's definitely a non-zero chance that we go into that final Martinsville race with both Denny Hamlin and Ryan Blaney being below the cut line, needing a win. Because say, just assuming Kyle Larson goes out, wins the regular season championship, doesn't DFL during the round of 12, and then Vegas, he's really good. Say Christopher Bell wins Vegas, Larson is sitting second, Bell's locked in. And just on points, you already have those top 2 guys through. Like you said, Preece wins Talladega. And then we're in a scenario where you need both Denny and Ryan to get into the Phoenix with a win at Martinsville. Like,
yeah. Maybe it's a nobody wins Talladega, right? Maybe someone not in the playoffs. Maybe it's,
Austin Dillon.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Austin Cindric,
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think it's really hard. I think I have no futures this year on anyone to win the championship. I don't think we've seen enough yet. We might know more after Kansas, Charlotte, Nashville, Michigan. I think that you'll have a little bit better idea. But at this point, pick the guy that's going to be good in the playoffs. Are you kidding me? Those guys are all such short prices.
Yeah. And like we were talking a little bit before we started recording, like Kyle Larson and Chris Bell were the best guys almost all year long, and they didn't make it to the Final 4. Yeah. So there is a chance that some weirdness happens and some drivers that probably should be in are out. I think we're going to have an opportunity potentially to get some really good numbers as we get closer to the end, but like you guys are saying, diving in on 3 or 4 or 5 it just seems silly at this point. Like the upside, the potential reward on those bets just isn't. There's no value there. Like you're going to be able to get Larson at the same number, if not longer, when we're talking in September. I also feel like the kind of like the July August stretch, like Sonoma, Dover, Indy, Iowa, Watkins Glen, we get different winners there. It gets a little wonky. Hendrick kind of just takes like a month and a half off, and all of a sudden they're prepped for the playoffs. So I feel like there's a window in there to get some opportunity, even if it's not necessarily Larson, to get a 10 or 11 on Byron, to get maybe Blaney floats to 8 or 9, and then you hope that obviously you want your guys locked in, but if we're going to Martinsville and Ryan Blaney's 75 or 80 to win the championship, I'm gonna be firing and hoping that he gets through to Phoenix and has a shot to cash that ticket for me.
I don't think you'll see him be 75 or 80 going into Martinsville, but maybe 30. But you could also say that about a lot of guys. Say that about Denny. If Denny's on the outside looking in, he's going to be one of the favorites to win Martinsville. I don't even care what happens he's going to be one of the favorites at Martinsville. I can tell you that right now. He's going to be one of the favorites at Martinsville, no matter where he's at in the standings. If he needs to win to get in, or he's already been eliminated, he's still going to be one of the favorites there. So, you could say that about Blaney. You could say that about Chase Elliott. That's kind of like those 3 guys have really kind of separated themselves there. But the thing is, we thought Homestead, Larson always had that kind of in the playoffs. And, that was, Blaney kind of had that, or Reddick had that in the playoffs. And it's been taken away and replaced with Talladega. So, it just becomes a little bit more unpredictable. In my opinion, tell me who's going to be good and who's going to be fast in October, and I'll tell you who I think has the best chance at winning in the championship. And even that, Blaney's had the most speed.
Mm-hmm.
Show me his wins. He's barely even leading laps. That's the crazy thing. Not only is he not winning races, he's got 197 laps led with the fastest car. Joey Logano has more. Even Austin Cindric has 159. Ryan Blaney's sitting at 197. Chase Elliott's only got 44 laps led. Oof.
He just rides around in like 5th, 6th place and calls it a day.
I told you, he's Kevin Harvick at the end of Harvick's career, where he was just like a 5th place car every single week. It's just
at least qualifying better, making him unbettable, right? So instead of being 20-1 like we got Harvick every week,
no.
And then at the end of last year too with Elliott, we were getting like those longer numbers as well.
Yeah. I'm looking through some of these deeper numbers to see if there's anything worthwhile, and
all right. I'm just gonna throw this out there because we talked about this at the beginning of the year.
Are we gonna do the Shane Van Gisbergen at 250 to 1?
No. In the same breath that we talked about SVG's potential on the long shot because of all the road course wins and all that stuff, why are we not considering AJ Allmendinger, who's clearly been much better than SVG? He is also really good at road courses. If he can somehow get through the round of 16, then he's set up at the Roval to get to the round of 8. And at 250, like, that's a tiny ass little investment for a huge payday.
Yeah, I mean, I think you would take that if you could sell it. Or you have to build a card around it too, because I do not see AJ Allmendinger winning at Phoenix to take the championship. So I think from a value, probably more so than SVG. But from a realistic standpoint, do you just want to brag about closing line value, or do you want to cash a ticket?
If there's an ATM machine that we can turn in these CLV tokens to, I'd really love to find one, because I feel like we got a big stash of CLV sitting behind us, but we can't actually do anything with it.
Yeah, CLV, that doesn't even matter to me. Like, I just, the only reason it matters is if they actually float up other drivers. They don't float up other drivers. You're not getting better driver. Like, you could beat the market with I don't know who's someone that closed way shorter at Bristol.
Bowman.
Okay, Bowman. Oh yeah, Bowman. So yeah, you did a great job. Now, did that help you get Kyle Larson at a higher number? No. Kyle Larson also went off at plus 250. So
yeah,
congratulations to everybody that beat the market on Alex Bowman. You never had a chance to win. Larson kind of dominated the race. So the only time closing line value matters is when it does help you get, another driver. Otherwise, it's just something to hang your hat on and pat yourself on the back as some sort of justification for being sharp. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point. Any other hot topics or anything on the tip of your guys' tongue before we get out of here? All right. Well, it's good to catch up. It was good to chat. Obviously, we got a nice little Easter break, even though we do, as Chris mentioned, we are going to Rockingham with Xfinity and Trucks. Chris, the pre-race poll will be back for Texas or Talladega?
We might do it for Talladega. We'll see how things are going. Might be fun just to kind of hop on and have a couple beers and talk about racing.
Yeah.
But yeah, pre-race poll, usually every week. Sometimes it changes now that I'm a father and, I have a way more responsibility in my life. But yeah, 2 hours before every race, live on X and YouTube. But yeah, just come in and talk racing. And I think we've gotten a lot right this year.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Bristol was a difficult one to even, after practice to even have a decent conversation about. But I feel like we're getting a lot right, and certainly having a good time doing it. So
yeah, it's the best way to get ready for it's like your final prep for the race. You're doing your last few notes, getting some bets in. There's a lot of really sharp people in the comments.
Yeah, I think that's the best part is like, hey, how do we, saying like, okay, I think Josh Berry is undervalued this week. And then you have so many people that are like, hey, what about Top Ford? He's in group F and, maybe we take this way, or is it a top 5 price? And we actually do a pretty good job of kind of distilling down the best numbers on how to take advantage of a car that we think is undervalued, or how do we bet against a car that's overvalued, or you just never know. If you don't like the price on one guy, that means you might like it on someone else. So
exactly,
actually figuring out a way to make money is kind of the best, in my opinion, have a conversation about it. There's not a lot of egos in there, and it's about getting it right. It's not about who's right. So that's kind of why I enjoy the show.
Yep. We can all make money together, have a lot of fun in the process, and bring a beer, bring a computer screen, phone, tablet, whatever, and join the conversation, because it definitely makes you a smarter, better. It makes you a better, and hopefully keep that growing. We really appreciate Chris hopping on and joining us. Brian and I will be back next week for our normal stuff for Talladega. But we are going to be off this weekend for the Easter break, so we will be back next week. We appreciate everybody who's still here. Make sure you smash the like on the way out. Click subscribe if you haven't done that. We're marching ever closer to 1,500 subs, which we're very excited about. The Grid Rival League is still open. You can still jump in there and get the lowest points and work your way back up. There's picks in there. There's our Substack link in the description. All that stuff will be there. So check that out. Brian and I will be back next week. Make sure you subscribe to Chris's YouTube channel and join the poll every Sunday morning, about 2 hours before green flag. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll talk to you next time.